The galaxy was silent when the screen turned on. Billions of homes, stations, and starships received the same signal at once. It was not a message of peace. It was not a warning. It was a trial that had already been decided. A small human boy stood in the middle of the platform, his wrists locked in heavy chains, his face pale under the bright alien lights. The announcer's voice was cold. He spoke in the common tongue so that every species could understand. This boy is guilty of resistance. He is guilty of spreading hope. He is guilty of being human. The camera pulled close. The boy could not have been more than 15. His eyes were wide, not with tears, but with the stubborn fire that only humans carried. Soldiers of the Galactic State surrounded him. Their armor was polished, their weapons humming, their stance proud. They wanted to show strength. They wanted to show control. Across the stars, people watched in silence. Some shook their heads. Others whispered in fear. A few turned away. Nobody dared to speak too loudly. To challenge the Galactic State meant death. And now, everyone was about to see what happened to those who dared to stand against it. The announcer raised his hand. This execution is not punishment. It is a message. Let it be known across the galaxy. Humans are broken, humans are weak, and those who defy us will meet the same end. The boy lifted his head. His lips trembled, but his voice carried through the microphone. My father will come for you. Laughter filled the chamber. The soldiers laughed. The announcer laughed. The audience across the galaxy heard it too. The idea that one man could challenge an empire was ridiculous to them. They thought it was the last desperate cry of a doomed child. Your father? The announcer mocked. Your father is nothing. Your kind is nothing. Today the galaxy will see the end of your foolish hope. The executioner stepped forward. A massive alien with black steel plating and glowing red eyes raised his weapon. The blade was not simple. It was designed to make the act slow, dramatic, and cruel. The camera zoomed in again, making sure that every corner of the galaxy could see the moment. The boy closed his eyes. For a second, the silence felt endless. Every home, every station, every ship, every bar and street corner, everyone was waiting for the strike. And then it happened. The blade came down. The boy fell. The chains clattered against the floor, echoing like a cruel drumbeat. The screen did not cut away. The Galactic State wanted every species to see, to learn fear, to understand their rule could not be challenged. The announcer spread his arms. So ends the defiance of man. So ends the hope of rebels. So ends the myth of human strength. The broadcast switched to wide angle. The boy's body lay still on the platform. Soldiers stood unmoving, proud, cold. The announcer's words were meant to be carved into the memory of every watcher. But instead of silence, whispers began. Not loud enough to be caught by cameras, but spreading quickly. A name, a story, a ghost. Some whispered it in fear, others in warning. Baba Yaga, the state had made a mistake. They thought killing one child would end resistance. They thought this broadcast would break the human spirit. They thought they had proven their power. What they did not know was that they had just awakened something far older, far darker, and far more dangerous than they could imagine. The camera lingered for a final moment on the dead boy, his small frame lying in the pool of light. Somewhere on Earth, on a quiet farm, a man watched the same screen. His face gave nothing away. His eyes stayed fixed on the image, and then slowly the screen went black. Across the galaxy, people went back to their lives in silence. But the whisper had already started, a whisper that would grow louder, a whisper that would turn into fear. The boy was gone, but his father was still alive, and his father was Baba Yaga. The broadcast ended, but the echo of it remained. In the great halls of the Galactic Senate, the members congratulated themselves. They believed they had crushed the last spark of human pride. They believed the galaxy had seen their strength and would bow in silence. The chamber was filled with voices layered one over another, each alien counselor speaking of order and obedience. Humans will no longer be a problem, one declared. Their children will serve as warnings. Their people will learn they are nothing. Applause followed, sharp and hollow, bouncing off the shining metal walls. But outside those walls, in the shadowed corners of the galaxy, a different kind of conversation had already begun. It started in whispers, too quiet for the state's recorders to catch. In the mess halls of soldiers, in the bunkers of mercenaries, in the smoky bars of smugglers. One name began to spread, a name carried like a ghost through old stories of war. Baba Yaga. The young recruits who had never seen Earth's wars leaned forward when they heard it. "Who is that?" they asked. The veterans looked away. Some muttered prayers. Others clenched their jaws. One scarred officer simply spat on the floor and said, "Pray you never meet him." The stories were not written in official history. The Galactic State had tried to bury them, but legends have a way of surviving, stronger than facts. There were tales of a man who had fought entire campaigns alone, a shadow that moved through enemy lines, leaving nothing but silence behind. Fleets had vanished. Fortresses had fallen. Armies had broken in fear, not because of numbers, but because of one man. Some claimed he was not human at all. Some swore he could not be killed, that bullets and plasma passed through him like air. Others whispered that he was the monster humans themselves feared, a weapon born from their darkest wars. And now, the boy's final words echoed in every ear that had heard them. "My father will come for you." The Galactic Senate dismissed these rumors as nothing more than weakness of mind. "Legends," one counselor sneered. "Superstitions of frightened soldiers. Humanity has no weapon left. Humanity has no heroes left. They are finished, but fear is not logical. It spreads like smoke, clinging to every mind it touches. On mining colonies, workers looked at the sky differently. On prison worlds, whispers spread through the cells like fire. Even on alien warships, the name was spoken with unease. And somewhere deep in the heart of the Galactic State, an old intelligence officer looked at the reports piling on his desk. He remembered a battle decades ago, when a single human operative had turned the tide and vanished before they could capture him. His superiors told him it was impossible, that one man could not have done such things. But he remembered the symbol carved into the wall of a ruined fortress. 3 words, "I was here." His hands trembled as he connected the old files with the new whispers. He knew the boy's last words had not been empty. Meanwhile, on Earth, the farmhouse stood quiet under a gray sky. Inside, the man sat at a wooden table. The broadcast had ended hours ago, but the screen was still black in front of him. His hands rested on the surface, still as stone. The world outside thought him a simple farmer, a man who had left war behind. They knew nothing of the trunk hidden under his floor, or the contacts stored in his old communicator, or the reputation that even the galaxy had tried to erase. He said nothing. He did not weep. He did not curse. He simply stood and walked to the old wooden floorboards. His boots pressed against the hidden panel. He opened it slowly. Inside was the past the galaxy had hoped was buried forever. Black armor, worn but deadly. Weapons forged in secret. Maps, codes, and untraceable chips. The man touched the armor with a steady hand. The name that others whispered in fear was his own shadow. He had not wanted to wear it again. He had wanted peace, wanted his boy to grow without war. But now peace was gone. Somewhere in the galaxy, soldiers laughed at the boy's last words. They believed no man could stand against them. They would learn their mistake. For the first time in years, the man allowed himself to speak. His voice was low, almost a growl, but it carried through the empty farmhouse like a vow. "They took my son. Now I will take everything." And across the galaxy, the whispers grew louder. Baba Yaga had risen. Night fell over the quiet fields of Earth. The farmhouse stood alone, its windows dark, its air heavy. Inside, the man who had once been forgotten by history began to move with purpose. His steps were slow, measured, deliberate. Every motion carried weight, as though the air itself remembered who he was. The trunk lay open on the wooden floor. The black armor inside gleamed faintly, scarred from battles long past. It was not ceremonial. It was not polished for display. It was built for war, each dent and scratch telling its own story. He reached for it, and for a moment his hand paused. He remembered the promise he had made, to himself, to his wife, to his son. A promise that war was over, that the world could finally be a place of peace. But the broadcast had shattered that promise. His boy's face had been shown to the galaxy, his voice trembling yet strong, and his death delivered with cruel arrogance. The image burned in his mind. It would never leave. Piece by piece, he began to put on the armor. The chest plate locked into place. The gauntlets sealed with a quiet click. The helmet he left for last, setting it aside like a shadow waiting to cover his face. His reflection in the cracked mirror was no longer that of a farmer. It was the ghost that haunted battlefields, the name that soldiers whispered when their camps fell silent. Baba Yaga, he opened the second case. Inside were weapons that had been hidden for years. Knives balanced perfectly for killing, a rifle modified to pierce shields, a compact device capable of disabling entire security grids. He checked each one, his hands moving with muscle memory. They were not tools. They were extensions of him. On the table sat an old communicator, outdated by galactic standards but untraceable by modern scanners. He powered it on. The screen flickered, numbers and names scrolling across it. Contacts from another life. Some had died long ago. Others had vanished into exile. Few still answered the call. One by one, he sent the same message. Short, direct, final, he is dead. They will pay. The responses came back in fragments. A mercenary ship changing its course. An ex-soldier sharpening his blade. A smuggler unlocking her hidden vault. Old debts and loyalties stirred awake. The galaxy was vast, but his reach spread through the cracks. Through the forgotten. Through those who lived in the shadows just as he did. In the cities above Earth. News feeds replayed the boy's execution. Alien commentators repeated the same lines about order and obedience. But among humans, the silence grew heavier. Families turned off their screens. Soldiers stared at the floor. Every man and woman who had ever served, every veteran who had carried scars, felt something they had not felt in years, rage that could not be contained. And in the darker corners of the galaxy, where criminals, smugglers, and mercenaries thrived, the boy's last words were being repeated with grim certainty. "My father will come for you." In the farmhouse, the man tightened the last strap of his armor. He picked up the helmet and placed it under his arm. His son's photo still sat on the shelf, a boy smiling in better days. He looked at it for a long time. His face did not change, but his eyes burned with something deeper than grief. He reached for the light switch. The farmhouse went black. An hour later, a small ship rose from the field. It had no beacon, no signal, no markings. It lifted silently into the night sky, leaving the Earth behind. Its course was not registered in any system. Its path invisible to state patrols. Only one man sat inside, his silhouette framed against the stars. Across the galaxy, word began to spread faster now. Ships that had once fled from battles suddenly reversed course. Smugglers carried the whispers with every cargo run. Soldiers remembered the name carved into walls and spoken in terror. A storm was forming, and everyone could feel it. The galactic state celebrated in their shining towers, unaware of the shadow now rising against them. They believed the execution had ended human defiance. They believed no one could touch them. But in the silence of space, Baba Yaga set his course. He had no council to answer to, no army at his back, no need for approval or permission. He had only a promise carved into his heart, sharper than any blade, blood for blood, and the galaxy, whether it wished to or not, was about to remember what it meant when a father rose to claim vengeance. The first strike came without warning. A broadcast tower on the rim of the galactic state went dark. One moment it was streaming propaganda across 6 sectors. The next moment its signal vanished. Patrols rushed to investigate, but by the time they arrived, the tower was already in ruins. The guards were gone, the walls burned, and across the wreckage a single message was carved in steel, with a soldier's blade. Blood for blood. No one had seen who did it. No camera survived, but the whispers grew louder. Soldiers spoke of shadows moving faster than the eye could follow, of a figure in black armor that came and went like smoke. The name spread again, Baba Yaga. At first the state laughed it off. A terrorist, the officials said. A coward who attacks from the dark. But the second strike came before their words even finished echoing. This time it was a convoy of high-ranking officers traveling to the capital. The fleet was armed, escorted by warships, its path guarded by drones. Yet when it arrived, one vessel was missing. Not disabled, not delayed, missing. Search parties combed the route, but all they found was debris drifting in silence. The flagship had been gutted from within, its systems turned against itself. The survivors whispered of a figure that walked through the corridors, leaving nothing alive. The state tried to silence them, but fear cannot be silenced. In the capital, the Senate demanded answers. Who is behind this? One counselor shouted. How can one man do this much damage? Another scoffed, insisting it was impossible. He is a phantom, they said. A story invented by humans to frighten us. But even as they argued, another report arrived. A prison world had fallen. The guards had been executed with their own weapons. The cells had been opened. Thousands of human prisoners were free, their chains left piled in the central square. And on the walls of the warden's office, painted in the blood of the fallen, were the same 3 words, blood for blood. The Senate chamber went silent. The whispers had now become screams of fear across the lower ranks. Soldiers muttered it before every patrol. Pilots checked their shadows twice before launching. Even the mercenaries, once loyal to the state, began refusing contracts. The shadow war had begun. On the edge of a mining colony, a patrol squad moved cautiously through the tunnels. Their scanners picked up no life signs, yet the air felt heavy. One soldier's hand shook on his weapon. Another whispered, "Do you hear it?" The sound of footsteps echoed in the dark, though no one was there. And then the lights went out. When reinforcements arrived hours later, the squad was gone. Only their helmets remained, stacked neatly in a circle, with a human combat knife driven into the ground at the center. The panic spread faster than any rebellion could. The state's strength was its image of control, its power to make others believe resistance was hopeless. But with every strike, Baba Yaga ripped that illusion apart. He did not attack armies. He attacked symbols, broadcast stations, officers, prisons, patrols. Each blow reminded the galaxy that the state could bleed. Among ordinary citizens, the whispers became hope. On colonies where humans lived under alien rule, people began to raise their heads again. On ships where human workers were treated as tools, they spoke the name like a prayer. Even among non-humans, fear turned to respect. They remembered their own stories of the black ghost that no empire could kill. Meanwhile, the man himself moved from world to world, leaving no trace but fire and silence. He did not rally armies. He did not give speeches. He hunted. Every night he replayed the broadcast in his mind. The boy's face, his voice, his final words. Each strike was not just vengeance. It was a message written in steel and blood. The galaxy will remember my son. The state responded with fury. They declared martial law. Fleets were mobilized. Rewards were offered. Yet with every step they took, their fear deepened. They were not fighting a rebellion. They were being hunted by a father who had nothing left to lose. And as the 4th week of attacks began, the Senate received a new broadcast. The screen lit up across their chambers, across their cities, across their fleets. A figure in black armor appeared, his face hidden, his voice calm. "You killed my boy," he said. "Now I will kill your empire." The signal cut. The silence afterward was heavier than any explosion. The hunt had only just begun. The Galactic state had built its empire on fear. For centuries, fear had kept its people silent, its armies loyal, and its enemies broken. But now that same weapon was turning against them. Fear had a new face, and it was not the state's banners. It was the shadow of one man. Reports flooded into the Senate chambers. Entire patrol fleets had gone dark. Communication hubs no longer answered calls. Outposts that had been secure for decades now stood abandoned, their walls blackened with fire, their commanders missing. The same message appeared again and again, carved, painted, or burned into the ruins. Blood for blood. The Senate tried to keep order. Officials shouted across the marble floor, demanding explanations, demanding answers that no one could give. One alien counselor slammed his fist on the table. "This is impossible. One human cannot do this." But deep down, even he knew it was not just one man. The legend had become alive again, and the galaxy itself was beginning to side with it. The freed prisoners had formed strike groups, raiding supply lines, cutting through the state's outer defenses. Mercenaries who once served for pay now refused the state's contracts, some even joining the chaos. Traders smuggled weapons to humans instead of food rations. The state's fleets were stretched thin, chasing shadows that always seemed 2 steps ahead. On the ground, morale collapsed. Soldiers carried their rifles nervously, watching every corner, as though a ghost would step out at any moment. Entire barracks refused to deploy. A squad of officers abandoned their posts, whispering only one reason: Baba Yaga is out there. And all the while the man moved with deadly precision. He did not strike at random. He targeted the heart of the state piece by piece. One night a governor's mansion erupted in flames. The governor himself was found in the ashes, his body pinned to the wall with his own ceremonial blade. Another day, a weapons factory ceased operation. Workers fled screaming of black-clad soldiers. though only one shadow had been seen. The factory's overseer was left alive, trembling, with 3 words carved into his desk: "I was here." The Senate grew desperate. They doubled security around their leaders, filled the skies with patrols, and executed anyone accused of helping humans. But the tighter they gripped, the more their empire slipped away. Each new execution only strengthened the whispers. Each act of cruelty only made the legend grow. And among the people of the galaxy, something the state had feared most began to happen. Hope returned. On a mining world, human workers refused to bow to their overseers. When soldiers raised their weapons, the workers only stared back and said one name. On a transport ship, an alien captain hesitated to strike down a human rebel. He too had heard the stories, had seen the fear in the eyes of state officials, and for the first time he wondered if siding with them was wise. Baba Yaga was no longer one man. He was becoming a movement. The Senate tried one last time to assert control. They held a public rally, streaming their message across the galaxy, just as they had streamed the boy's execution. The Chancellor stood before millions, his voice echoing through the halls of power. "The state will not fall. We are order. We are strength. And we will destroy this phantom." But even as he spoke, alarm screamed. The broadcast cut to static. Then a new image appeared. The black figure stood on the screen, calm and unmoving. His armor reflected the light, his voice deep and steady. "You think you are feared," he said. "But fear belongs to me." The Chancellor froze. Billions watched in silence as the figure lifted a blade still dripping with the blood of his last strike. Behind him, flames consumed a government stronghold, proof of his words. "You killed my son. I will kill your empire." The feed ended. Across the galaxy, the effect was instant. Riots broke out on prison worlds. Rebellions ignited on colonies. Even in the heart of the capital, soldiers refused to march. The Galactic state had wanted to break humanity with a broadcast. But now their own broadcasts carried their doom, and in the dark halls of power, the officials finally began to understand. They had not executed a child to prove strength. They had signed the Empire's death sentence. The father was still out there, and he was not finished. The galactic capital had never known silence like this. Streets once alive with banners and processions now stood empty. Towers that had always glowed with light now burned with smoke. The air was thick with fear, and fear had a name: Baba Yaga. The Senate chambers, once a fortress of arrogance, were barricaded. Guards stood shoulder to shoulder, their weapons shaking, their eyes scanning every shadow. The senators shouted, their voices cracking, desperate to believe they still held control. But they knew the truth. Their empire was crumbling around them, and then the screens came alive. Every world, every station, every ship that could receive a signal was suddenly filled with the same image. Not propaganda, not a speech from the Chancellor. It was a face hidden behind black armor, a figure standing calm in a room drenched with red light. Baba Yaga. His voice was steady, almost quiet, but it cut through the galaxy like a blade. "You showed the galaxy my son's death. You laughed. You believed it would break us. Tonight I show you something different." The camera shifted. Behind him, bound in chains, were the leaders of the galactic state, the Chancellor, his generals, his ministers. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide with disbelief. For the first time, they were the ones on display, trembling before the galaxy they had ruled with iron. "This is not execution," Baba Yaga continued. "This is justice. You told the galaxy humanity was weak, that our children were nothing, that hope could be killed. But you forgot one truth. Hope does not die, it waits. And when you spilled my son's blood, hope awoke in fire." The generals tried to speak, to shout, but he silenced them with a single look. He stepped closer, the sound of his boots echoing in the chamber. "You built your empire on fear, but now fear is yours. You made a spectacle of my child. Now I make a spectacle of you." One by one he named their crimes. Worlds enslaved, rebellions crushed, innocents slaughtered. With each name, each memory, the galaxy listened. And for the first time in centuries, they believed justice was real. The Chancellor begged for mercy. His voice broke. "You cannot kill us all. The galaxy will descend into chaos. There will be no order without us." Baba Yaga's reply was ice. "There was never order, only chains. Tonight those chains break." He raised his blade. The camera did not cut away. The galaxy watched as judgment was carried out, swift and final. The leaders who had thought themselves gods fell like any other mortals. Their blood marked the floor where once they had commanded armies. When it was done, Baba Yaga stood alone in the chamber. The silence was absolute. He looked into the camera, his face hidden but his words burning into every mind. My boy is gone. Nothing will bring him back. But remember this, humanity does not kneel. You can kill us, but we will rise again. You can chain us, but we will break free. And if you ever come for us again, I will return. He lowered his weapon. The screen went black. Across the galaxy, the effect was instant. On colonies, prisoners raised their fists in triumph. On alien worlds, citizens whispered that the state was finished. On human ships, soldiers wept openly, not in sorrow, but in pride. The Empire's grip had shattered. The legend of Baba Yaga had become more than one man. It had become a fire that no power could extinguish. And in the farmhouse on Earth, long abandoned, the wind moved through the empty rooms. The man had left it behind, along with the quiet life he once dreamed of. All that remained was a photograph of a smiling boy, untouched on the shelf. The galaxy would remember his death. The galaxy would remember his father's vengeance, and the galaxy would never forget the price of spilling human blood. The final broadcast had been made.